Moose, it's good to have you back on the podcast. Of course, you were with us for our fantasy draft a couple of weeks ago, and I guess the first question I got to ask you is, how did you handle the shots fired at your roster over Twitter?
You know, haters. If you ain't got haters, you ain't popping. I'm pretty sure that was Mahatma Gandhi who said that. So let the haters talk. Bring it on. When my team is holding up the trophy, we'll keep the receipts. We keep the receipts.
There you go. That's fair. Totally understandable as well. Well, it's no secret why we have you on the podcast as a alumni, former, and well, I guess is it like an Aggie where once you're a Tiger, you're always a Tiger? You're not
Oh
ever a
yeah,
former.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
Okay,
it's just stuck with you for the rest of your life. You can't.
there you go.
It's like
So
acid split.
lifelong Clemson Tiger, a man of international renown, possibly. After the article that was written about walk-ons, you appeared in that. Mr. Clemson Tiger is with
Yeah.
us to break down Clemson and Dabo's task ahead of him in this 2024 season. And Moose, let me ask you this to start. What are the expectations that Clemson has in 2024? Is Dabo in an uncomfortable place as the head coach, or are folks starting to kind of warm back up?
I think Dabo. So Dabo's unique in the sense that he's not plugged in, so he doesn't have social media. But I think Dabo's seat is only hot from his own temperature, and what I mean by that is he's not meeting his expectations in terms of production on the field. In terms of the fans or the hot seat, the fans are fickle. I mean, they've always been that way, and they always will. We picked up a lot of spoiled fans along the way, especially from people who weren't there when Clemson was happy to make a bowl game. Now we're unhappy if we don't make the playoff. So the expectation, I think, coming in for the Tigers, whether it be in the locker room, it's national championship. That's every single year. Win the opener, win the division, which there isn't a division anymore. Win the
Yeah.
conference, win the state, win the playoff. Well, it used to be win the bowl. Now it's win the playoff. So I don't think that changes. And Dabo's purpose seems to be bigger than uh, football and production on the field. Obviously, he can't keep his job, but his purpose seems to help align with the success. So I think the fans are more disappointed than the boosters and the people who would have control over his job.
How was how was the lack of a 10-win season kind of reacted to, not necessarily from the fans on Twitter, but those around the program, like you said, those that have been around since Clemson was fighting just to make a bowl game? Did that actually matter as much as the larger Twitter sphere made it seem?
Unfortunately, I think the Twitter sphere aligns pretty well with what people were saying that are not online, and that was a little disappointing to me. There's people that I'm in circles with that were just very disappointed, saying things that I wouldn't expect them to say, and I don't know. Like if you look at it statistically, Clemson was not a bad team last year. They were in the top 15 in first downs. They were in the top 15 in yards per game. What they were doing was they weren't finishing, which they just came out with an article. Dabo's word for the year, he has a word for the year every single year, is finish. And if Clemson literally just finishes last year, finishes in the red zone, finishes drive, finishes kicks, they're undefeated. The Duke game, they rushed for over 250 yards and passed for over 250 yards and lost by 21 points. That doesn't happen. It's happened once in Clemson's football history. So you take away the turnovers, they finish those drives, if you will. They beat Duke. They beat Miami if they finish. Don't turn the ball over. They beat Florida State if they kick the 27-yard field goal and don't turn the ball over. So like
Yeah.
the difference between 9 wins, even 8 wins, in an undefeated season is 3, 4, 5 plays. And if you talk to people inside the program, they could point to the 5 different plays that cost us games. The margins are so thin. And Mitch, to add to that, when I was playing there, if we beat a subpar opponent by not enough, they would release a video of us dancing in the locker room, and the comments would be, "Why are you dancing? You should have beaten them more." It's like winning in college football is hard, and that's no excuse for underperforming because nine wins is underperforming for what that team was last year.
Sure.
But what people the accusations were not realistic. However, winning in football is hard. So you dance, you celebrate when you actually get those wins because then you have a 9-win season like we did this year, in which it's so disappointing because you should have been so much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's grass is always greener syndrome, right? I mean,
Right.
we are so quick to forget where we've come from and lose that perspective. So I think that's well said. For the roster this year, it's a talented roster. It's a roster that, if not picked to outright win the conference, is one of the top two, maybe three teams. If you believe that, Florida State's going to run it back and Miami is this championship contender all of a sudden. So tell me, holistically as a roster, what's your confidence level in Clemson? And I guess let's start there. We'll break it down after that.
I'm at an 8 out of 10. So I'm very confident. Um, how they ended last year. So again, we go back to the word finish. So the thing that cost them games last year was finishing, and then what they did at the end of the year, they finished. They went 5-0 at the end of the year, and what I saw in terms of Cade Klubnik, playmakers who would not have necessarily played had there not been injuries. There was 10 injuries in that wide receiver room last year. We had walk-ons starting in some of the games, which shout out walk-on Redshirts. We matter too.
Right.
But we have depth at wide receiver position. We have Bryant Wesco, who's already logged a faster catapult time than Nate Wiggins did. And what catapult is, guys, it's a GPS tracking system that players wear on themselves during practice to see how fast they're going, how much output in terms of power and energy they're giving. Like, do they need a day off? Do they need, whatever. There's a lot of analytics that go into it. Bryant Wesco already has faster and more impressive times than Nate Wiggins did as a senior. Bryant Wesco is 18 years old. He's already put on 20 pounds. He came in at 160. He's at 182 now. So he's a guy that's going to step up and play immediately. TJ Moore is arguably a better receiver, comes in the summer, and he's going to be phenomenal. Then you have the returners in Antonio Williams, Tyler Brown, Adam Randall, who weighed 230 pounds with at 4% body fat, which I don't know if people realize that is insane.
Yeah.
Jake Brenningstool put on 20 pounds. He's at 240 now. And the things that does to that offense is now when Jake Brenningstool, the tight end, is on the field, you don't know if he's going to, if it's a run or pass play, because now when he's got that much bulk, he can play, he can block, he can put his nose in the trenches and be a factor. So I'm confident in that. I want to see that. My biggest question marks are the offensive line, which I'm really impressed with what Matt Luke has done there. I went to a practice in the spring and just the energy level. And I'm going to go and get in front of this too. Thomas Austin was the offensive line coach last year. He was there when I was there as a GA. I love Thomas Austin. Very, very smart individual, knows football, knows the game. Take it easy on him. I mean, we don't know everything that went on behind closed doors. I promise you it wasn't all on him. He had to eat it, but it wasn't all on him. But you bring in Matt Luke, and to Matt Luke's credit, he is different. The energy he brings for every single play and rep at practice is unbelievable, Mitch. And one of the things that I was most impressed with, he reminds me a lot of Brent Venable. And what I mean is, when I was at Clemson, Brent Venables would stop a play to move a player over an inch, 2 inches. Hey, Ben Boulware was there. He would stop before the play started, have Ben move over a step to the right, and then he would start the play back up. Those are the type of details that win you games. And then obviously he brought the intensity with himself too, as he's famously known for on the sidelines. Matt Luke has that same demeanor. He was stopping guys at fall camp over a misstep by a couple of inches. Guys, they say football is a game of inches for a reason. Those little minute details are incredibly, incredibly important. And then if you bring that passion along with it, you have a great, great football coach that can drive change. So my biggest question marks were the offensive line and Cade Klubnik cerebrally. So this is his second year with Garrett Riley. So he's got a full year under his belt. It seems like he's going to have weapons. He's going to have hopefully consistent weapons throughout the year if they can stay healthy. And if the offensive line is playing like I think they will, like I saw them play in the spring, I think they can take a big step forward with that offense.
Well, you make a good point, and I appreciate the offensive line discussion as well. I mean, gosh, so much of this game comes down to if you can win in the trenches, and having a great offensive line coach like Matt Luke is known for being, gets a bad rap for his 10 years as head coach, and the lack of success, the disappointment that came out of that. But people forget very quickly. I think similarly to Sam Pittman, maybe out of his depth a little bit as a head coach, but boy, coaching the big uglies up front, like there are few better in the country at
Phenomenal.
doing that. You got three returners along the offensive line, but you mentioned Cade Klubnik, and specifically you mentioned his development cerebrally, right? Last year, it was what, 16 touchdowns, 19 touchdowns. I'm sorry, 9 interceptions, nearly 3,000 yards passing. I covered him in high school. I know the physical tools that he's got, a great arm. He can put it where he wants it most of the time. Need to see that completion percentage come up a little bit. It was at 64%, which isn't bad, but to take that next step, you want to see him be closer to 70%, right? Tell me what you see from a mental aspect in Cade Klubnik's game. What did you see last year? What are you hoping to see in 2024?
Yeah, and then I wasn't there. That's a great question, by the way. I'm not there. I'm not in the locker room, not in the huddle. But from what I saw on the couch, so it's a lot easier to pick these things apart on the couch. But it seems like some of the guys I've talked to have reiterated the same things. He looked like he had trouble with setting the line. So hey, does the line need to shift to the right? Are they already shifting to the right? And I see heat's coming from the left. I need to flip the protection.
Mhm.
I didn't see that happening last year. Again, it could have been, but I didn't see it happening. And another thing I didn't see that he did well was five guys. There's five guys on the offensive line. Five guys can't block six. If there's a hot guy coming, you need to know where your hot route is. So what that means in layman's term, you have that sixth guy coming. He's not going to be blocked. You, as a quarterback, have to be able to account for him. You see it pre-snap. You should be able to identify those things. And no, every route scheme is going to have a hot route, or you can check it if you see it. I didn't see that happening. The game seemed very fast for him. And there's multitude of reasons why that could be. It could be poor offensive line play. It could have been poor receivers. You don't know who you're throwing to, so you're already panicking. You don't have that confidence. But if he can get that stuff down, he's phenomenal. Like you said, he's got the tools. He can run. He can make almost any throw. And I'm okay with the picks. I really am. I want to see him trying to put the ball down the field. But what I don't want to see is the stupid mistakes. And like I said, you didn't flip the protection. You didn't identify your hot. Like, those are simple things. And yeah, from a fan's perspective, it's not the sexy plays. But what you don't realize is, hey, if he finds his hot route in that Florida State game, he doesn't get freaking drilled in the chest and lose the ball.
Yeah.
So those are the things that and it flips the entire game. Where had he made that hot route, maybe we get a 3-yard gain, maybe we get an incompletion, but you live to fight another down. And that is crucial. Do not turn the ball over. Do not turn the ball over. And if I can see him doing that at the line of scrimmage this year, I will feel very, very confident in his ability and what Clemson's offense is going to do.
Flip the page for me. Take me over to the defense. You've got just a handful of returning starters on the team, not necessarily a commentary on the depth of that defense. And boy, I mean, there are a few locker rooms as loaded as what Clemson has. What do you expect from the defense, and where do you expect their strength, their identity to come from?
The strength and identity is going to come from the front seven. Peter Woods is going to play. He's going to be similar to Christian Wilkins. He's going to play every single position on that defensive line.
Yeah.
They talked about him playing more defensive end, and they thought he would cut down to 295. They did their weigh-in the other day, and he was 319. So didn't lose as much weight as maybe people thought, but
Just missed it.
apparently, yeah, just a bit. That's a bit outside. But apparently, he's cut body fat, so his body fat percentage has gone down, and they say he's moving better. I don't know. We'll see. But what I did see in the spring during the spring practices, he can set the edge better than most defensive ends I've ever seen. And by set the edge, I mean you establish the outside position. You won't let the offensive lineman get leverage on you or disposition you, and you're able to make the running back go out of where he's supposed to go. So you set that edge so he has to make a different cut, whether he bounces it wide and goes outside so he backtracks to keep going, or he has to cut it in and go into the trash. So they tried double teaming him, and he just stoned everybody. So very, very strong human being, phenomenal player. But the unsung hero of that defensive line is right next to him, and DeMonte Capehart. if you love good physical defensive line play, good hand placement, violent hand placement, go watch the play. Just type in Demonte Capehart, Notre Dame, and you'll see him shock the center and drive him back 4 yards in the backfield and then tackle Audric Estime on the way through it. I don't know if you realize this, guys. Audric Estime was a huge running back.
Yeah, he was.
Demonte Capehart, he essentially tackled the center and the running back. So those two guys are amazing. And now you got TJ Parker coming back. It's going to be his sophomore campaign. Going to be looking a little different. Not wearing 12 this year. Going to be wearing number 3. But one of the best pass rushers in college football, but definitely the ACC. So the other defensive end spot is the biggest question mark, but I'm not very concerned about it. You have DJ Mayo, who's come in. He's a freshman, and he has shocked everybody. He's already put on 25 pounds. He came in at 225, 230. He's at 250. He's 6'7", and apparently he can move. I haven't seen him in person yet, but everything I'm hearing out of camp is just glowing review. Then you have Cade Denahoff, who's projected to start. Just a phenomenal all-around good defensive lineman. So I'm very excited about him. Then you go to the linebackers. And not only do you have really good linebackers, you have depth. So you have your normal starters will probably be Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz, which is the best name for a linebacker in the country right now.
Yeah.
Bring the Woodaz. Those are two. Barrett Carter is the best linebacker in college football. And I don't even think it's close. He's a phenomenal player. He can play safety. He can play Mike. He can play Sam. He can play the Will. He can play everywhere. And then you got Wade Woodaz, who maybe the rest of the country doesn't know about him, but you'll learn about him this year. Phenomenal player. And he's consistent. He plays just as well in the pass game as he does in the run game. But then you got Sammy Brown, 5-star guy that comes in this year. Right behind him, right behind both of them, can play both sides. And they're saying he's one of the strongest guys on the team already. He's 18 years old. That is unheard of. And then next to him, you got Kobe McLeod. So you got 4 guys who can rotate and play. That is not even to mention Jamal Anderson, who plays more of that Barrett Carter style where he can play multiple parts of the linebacker position, a little bit of safety. Mm-hmm. Go back and watch the spring game and watch the interception he had. This guy's a playmaker. His dad played for the Falcons, played running back for the Falcons, Jamal Anderson. I don't know if everyone remembers him. But phenomenal linebacker who's not getting much love. And then, honestly, the defensive backs are going to be good too. And I'm hearing a lot of good things about their depth. We got another freshman out of Texas, Corian Gibson. I don't know if he's from your neck of the woods, Mitch, but he's wowing everybody at camp. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him getting some significant snaps in the Georgia game. I mean, you got Avion Terrell, who just got better and better every single week. You got Khalil Barnes, who got better and better every single week. You got RJ Mickens coming back. You got Sherrod Coble, who's coming back. I mean, you have a very, very deep secondary as well. I mean, the name of the game on defense is depth, and it's just a plethora of riches over there. So I'm very, very excited about the defense. And for some reason, some people aren't. But and Shelton Lewis is another guy I want to mention. Very, very fast, very, very good, very cocky player. I like watching him play. He's one of those like more stereotypical defensive backs that are going to make a play and let you know.
Yeah. Well, so you've got ACC opponents, the fans shaking in their boots now. If they weren't familiar with Clemson's roster, they certainly are after that rundown. So take me to the schedule. Everybody is counting Clemson out against Georgia. I saw a take earlier on Twitter where someone was saying, you know what, Clemson's going to knock off Georgia in week 1. It's going to be stunning. And that was refreshing to my football brain because I'll be honest, I've already put that in stone, right? Georgia 1-0, Clemson's going to be 0-1. It's fine. What does Clemson have to do to knock off Georgia? And then more importantly, keep that momentum rolling against a plucky App State team who's a group of 5 playoff favorite. NC State is week 3. And then you get Florida State in a road game in week 5.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. But number one, I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 more. Turnovers. We can't turn the ball over in the Georgia game. So in big games like this, it comes down to 6 plays. It's going to be a play here, a play there. It really is. Like, a game, you might have 100 plays played during the game, but 6 of those are going to be significant if you think about it. A turnover here, a drop pass here, a pass deflection here, a sack here. A blown assignment. It comes down to those little things, the little details. But what I'm excited about to see in Georgia is it's strength on strength. Georgia's offensive line is their strength. Clemson's defensive line is their strength. I cannot wait to see that matchup. Clemson's offensive line has some question marks. Georgia's defensive line has some question marks. So I'm curious to see how they match up. Carson Beck, I think, is a good quarterback. I think he gets maybe a little bit too much hype,
With you.
and I I wasn't blown away by him last year. Let's just
Yeah.
put it that way. Like I thought he was a good quarterback. Heisman watch. I think that's a little lofty in terms of who else he's competing with, but
Mhm.
I don't know. But the running game is going to be great at Georgia. You got Trevor Etienne who's coming in there, brother of Travis, little brother of Travis. I mind you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's going to be suspended yet for that game with everything that's happened in the offseason. Not to make light of anything, but they just kicked off a player in Ra Thomas, one of the receivers that they were probably looking for to be a key contributor. They got a wide receiver, and I'm forgetting where he's from at Georgia, and off the top of my head, but if he comes back to me, I'll say his name. But I think our defensive backs match up very well with their wide receivers. I think based on Georgia's reputation the past few years and what Clemson has done the past 2 years, people want to go ahead and say that's 0-1. I really don't think so. I think 14 points is insane. I would take the plus sign all day if it didn't violate my rule. You never bet on your team. You never bet against your
Yeah.
rival. You always lose. So if you're not a Clemson fan, do the plus sign. I promise you. Like I think Clemson's going to win that game. I'm a little biased. I'm in that orange Kool-Aid. But if I step out of my emotions and look at that game, I don't think if Georgia wins, it won't be by 14 points unless Clemson turns the ball over 1,000 times. But then you got App State, who you can't make mistakes against. They're a really good, really well-coached football team. You get a bye week, which is going to be great, and then you head into NC State. And NC State's coming to Clemson. That's helpful. But NC State has a plethora of weapons on the outside. I think that's going to be the best offense we see this year. Casey Concepcion is a phenomenal wide receiver. Shout out to my fantasy team. He's on the fantasy team.
Right.
And the biggest question mark with that team is Grayson McCall. Does his skill set transfer from Coastal Carolina to NC State? I think it will. So that game I have circled, and then Florida State, that defense is just going to be stout. But I think every Clemson fan probably has that game circled due to A, it being Florida State, and B, with DJ Uiagalelei coming over. There's no bad blood for most Clemson fans. I think most Clemson fans like DJU for the most part.
Yeah.
I think most of the bad blood comes from just transferring. No one likes to transfer portal. So, but it's gonna be fun. I mean, if we get past that, Wake Forest, Virginia, then you got Louisville. We don't know what Louisville's going to be.
Sure.
And then right after that is Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech. So Blacksburg's a tough place to play. That's going to be tough. So hopefully they don't sleepwalk into that game. And then, Pitt, Citadel, and South Carolina. So I think Clemson 11-1, 12-0 is not out of the question. I know I'm a little biased. I might get some heat for this, but I think they'll be 12-0 at the end of the year.
Okay. Well, that was going to be my next question. So we'll wrap it up on this. They go 11-1. They go 12-0. I'm assuming you have them winning the ACC championship game. So if all of that transpires, where does Clemson match up against Ohio State, against Oregon? Obviously, we're going to get to see week 1 against Georgia, but what are the realistic possibilities of Clemson winning a national championship this year?
Yeah, Ohio State is my favorite to win the national championship this year. Go and get that out there. They're just loaded at every single position. Every single position has depth, but you never know. So it depends on what happens throughout the season. Will Howard could go out there and just blow it. That offensive line, the question marks they have coming in, could turn into periods or exclamation points and be like, "Uh-oh, those aren't question marks; those are realities." So I think Ohio State's the team to beat, though, in all of college football. I mean, just the plethora of talent. But I truly think, I mean, if you look at the talent composition, it's not that big of a gap. I think if you look at 24/7's talent composition, I think Clemson's 10th in the nation. So it's not that big of a gap between 1 and 10, or excuse me, 2 and 10. I think Ohio State's on a different level right now in terms of the amount of talent they have. Oregon's going to be a really, really good football team. They're going to go as far as Dylan Gabriel can take them. So I think that's far. I think Dan Lanning's a great coach. I think he gets too much flack for not being able to win the big one. Ryan Day, too. And one thing I want to say to those people who say they can't win the big one is maybe they lose those games, but they keep getting themselves in that position, which is really hard to do. So in order to lose a big game, you have to get there first, and you have to make it a big game. So I love both those coaches. I think they're phenomenal. Texas is another one that I have a big question mark with Texas and their defense, but I think Clemson can match up with anybody in the country, to be honest with you.
I like it, man. I mean, I tell you what, I was high on Clemson. It's hard not to be higher on them after talking to you, after running down that roster. I've got them in the ACC championship game once again, and I think they're certainly my favorite to win the conference and go do something in this playoff. It's going to be fascinating to see how this 12-team playoff breaks down, where the
Yeah.
different teams end up getting seeded. I think that first round of matchups, both the first round and then obviously the conference champs that get the bye, seeing who they get to play in that second round off campus, that's going to have storylines that we could talk about for weeks and
Yeah.
months. So I'm excited to get there. Certainly not wanting to race through the season, but I'm locked in, man. I can tell you are as well, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
sounds like the Clemson Tigers are a threat.
We're going to find out week 1. There's not much time. This playoff game week 1. So
no, between y'all and the Aggies taking on Notre Dame, which
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to talk Notre Dame with Ty Hildebrand next week. That'll be fun to break down. But week 1's going to be a lot of fun. It feels like there's
is.
a lot of
Miami and Florida.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of okay, we're going to the playoffs coming out of week 1, and okay, the season might be on thin ice. I think coming out of week 1 out of the fan bases.
And what's crazy to add to that point, so you're talking about Clemson's fan base and the hot seat that Dabo's on. If Clemson goes and loses to Georgia, all Clemson fans are going to say, I told you so. We're going to suck again. Like, these are the same people. And it's like, if they beat Georgia, they're going to forget that the past 4 years happened. Yeah. So I'm curious to see. But I love first week big games like this. You really find out what your team's made of rather than playing St. Agnes School for Girls the first couple of weeks and then jumping into a real schedule. Like, and you're battle tested early. So it helps you out against some games down the road where maybe another team hasn't done that. So I'm excited. I'm so locked in. I talk to my son every day about football. We watched a little Clemson highlight from the Chick-fil-A Bowl in 2011. He said that LSU players were all mustard. He's 3 years old. So LSU players, you're all mustard. And I like that trash talk. I'm bringing that with me this year.
I love it, man. I love it. Moose, thanks so much for hopping on with us. We're excited to watch the Clemson Tigers this year. And that concludes our ACC preview as well. For the listeners at home, we really appreciate you hanging out with us. Stay tuned, though. We've got plenty more Group of 5 coming up. And then we've also got our season projections, the whole kit and caboodle. It's all coming up next week. So we're excited for that. Moose, appreciate you hanging out. We'll talk Clemson football a little bit later on in the season, I'm sure. Hope you have a great day.
Oh, yeah. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother. All right. Well, for everyone at home, like, subscribe, comment what you think about Clemson, the ACC. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us. And until next time, so long, everybody.
Gracious him. How about that?